Okay. So who are we here at the Community Foundation of Frederick County? We're a nonprofit philanthropic organization. Okay. We build a stronger and more vibrant community, largely through our grants and scholarship making program. We provide scholarships to students and grants to area nonprofits, trying to create a positive and lasting impact. Today, we're going to go over the basics of our impact grant cycle so you understand how this cycle works. We're going to walk through some of the expectations that we have from you on our application and also outline some of what you can expect on our application process. We're going to go through the different financial information that we're going to request as part of that application process. And then we'll talk about how the process will proceed after you've submitted your application. If anyone is new to Foundant, which is our grant application software that's hosted on our website, after our initial presentation, probably for about the last half hour, I will also be walking through just how to use our grant software if you've never used it before. If you have used it and you feel confident, you don't have to stay for that portion. If you're new or you'd like a refresher, then please stay and we'll go through exactly how to, which buttons to click, how to set up your account, and how to access the application through our grant software. So the basics of our impact grant season. Our impact grants run from August 15th to September 15th of this year. And so that is the period of time for which the application will be open and available on our website for you to submit. That application will close on September 15th, and then we'll be making our award notifications in November of 2024. So we will deliberate with our grants committees between September 15th and November. The spending period will be January 1st of 2025 through December 31st of 2025. So it's the calendar year of 2025. We require interim reports halfway through that year, so by the end of July of 2025. And then we'll ask for a final report on your grant spending by January 31st, 2026. So starting on Thursday is the 15th when our application period will open up. It will be open for a month. We'll send our award notifications out in November, and then your grant period will be the calendar year from January to December of 2025. What types of activities are we serving with our impact grant process? Well, we're looking for services that are focused on Frederick County. We are the Community Foundation of Frederick County. Our grants committees are made up of volunteers from Frederick County, so they all have sort of a Frederick County focus. And we're looking for activities that provide direct, measurable benefits to Frederick County residents. We'll get into sort of measurable a little bit later when we talk more about the application. We fund 501c3 nonprofits that are in good standing. We'll talk about good standing in just a minute. We also fund civic organizations that work on charitable projects. We fund religious organizations running non-sectarian projects. So that would be any sort of non-faith portion of their portfolio. We also fund quasi-governmental and governmental agency for projects that are not funded by tax dollars. So any project that is not funded by tax dollars is something that is potentially eligible for our impact grant season. So when we say a 501c3 in good standing, what do we mean by that? We look at three basic components of compliance here. The first is with the IRS, which is, I'm sure, familiar to all of you. So you want to make sure that you have filed your annual 990s before this application process so that your information is all up to date with the IRS. You need to have filed your annual report with the Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation. So that is where you might register that's where you sort of, if you're incorporated, that's where you register your corporation status. You also need to file as a charitable organization with the Secretary of State. So as a result of the Maryland Solicitations Act, any organization in Maryland that solicits charitable donations needs to be registered with the Secretary of State. So you want to first make sure that you have in fact registered with the Secretary of State. And then you also want to make sure that you have filed your annual reports. It can be the case, especially around this time of year, when some people have filed their reports and the state just either hasn't gotten to it yet, hasn't processed it yet, or hasn't updated their database yet. So that is a problem that we kind of see fairly frequently. If you have submitted your annual reports and the Maryland State portal is still showing you as out of compliance, please submit to us either a screenshot or a confirmation email that you may have received, just to prove that you have in fact submitted that report. There can be delays with the state. That's very common. We're very used to it. So if you are in that situation, please just send us the confirmation that you have in fact filed your report. And again, we know that sometimes those state databases can be out of date. Any questions about 501c3 good standing status?
Yes, we have
Real
one.
quick, if you are a new nonprofit, only been running less than a year, what do you do? Because we have not yet been in that time frame to file our annual reports.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I would just note that on your application somewhere. You can also send me an email on the side to just let me know.
Okay.
Because yes, there are certain organizations that they may have not been around for a full year. If you're not a 501c3, that you won't have to. So there are some organizations where you won't necessarily need to have all these things filed. So just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that that's attached to your record there. Was there a second question?
No, I was just going to read that one that was also put in the chat. Thank you, Beth.
Oh, okay, perfect. Thank you. So to give you an overview of how our impact grants work, in contrast to our strategic grant cycle, which is going on now, where we focus primarily in 3 areas of work: substance use disorder, supporting families with young children, and helping adults age in place. All of those 3 funding areas are determined by our strategic plan, and that's why we call them our strategic grants. For our impact grants, which are the ones starting on Thursday, all of those funding priorities are priorities that have been established by individual donors. In some cases, the donors want to give donations to a field of interest. Maybe they're interested in housing or they're interested in stray pets, and their fund is a little broader. In other cases, donors have set up funds that are rather specific. When you apply for the impact grant season, you will apply directly to one or more of our available funds. So we will provide for you, and it should be available on our website later today, a list of all of the funds that we have available for our impact grant cycle, and also all of the money available in that individual fund to give away. So you will, as you apply, you will select an individual fund to submit your application to. Your application will be considered sort of in line with the funding purpose of that fund. And you can apply to more than one fund, even with the same project. We'll get into that a little bit later, but you can apply to more than one fund if you feel like your project could fit into different funds that have been set up. Our minimum grant request is $500, so that's the minimum amount that you'll be able to ask for. We do have some smaller funds that have less than $1,000 available to give away this year, and we just ask that if you do apply for a fund that has less than $1,000 in it, please just request the full amount that's under $1,000. Otherwise, we won't really be able to give away the rest of that during this impact grant season. So when you go to our website and you look at the list of available funds, you'll see something that looks like this. Now, they're not color-coded on the document that we send out, but we've color-coded it here to give you a little bit easier time walking through it. So this is a sample of what a fund might look like on our website and in our list of available funds. You'll notice in yellow where it says Sharon I. Hooper Fund for Children, this is the name of the fund, and it's usually established by the donor who created the fund. To the right of the name in green, this is the amount available to award during this grant season. So there's $15,075.20 in this Sharon Hooper Fund. You can ask for anywhere from $500 up to $15,075.20. We can't give away more than what the fund has, and we're not going to give away less than $500. To the right of the amount of available funds, you'll see in this fund, it has 2 markers. One says P and one says IN. That P marker means that this fund is available for projects and programs. The IN means it's also available for individual support. Some funds may have both, in which case they'll grant to both nonprofit, I shouldn't say nonprofits, to both projects and individual support. Some of them will just be available for programs and projects, in which case you'll just see a P. Some of them are just available for individual support, in which case you'll just see an IN there. In the text of the fund, in the purpose, the fund purpose will generally include one or more of the two following things. The first is a fund purpose. They're all going to have that. In this case, we've highlighted that in red, and the purpose of this fund is to support programs serving youth. So that is the fund purpose. If you apply for a fund and your program does not meet that fund purpose, then it will not be considered, really. After that fund purpose, you'll notice that this fund also lists a preference. And in this case, it's preference given to services for families with children with catastrophic illnesses. So let's say that you are an organization that does not have programs serving youth. You should not apply for this fund. If you're a program that do serve youth, but you don't necessarily serve directly families with children with catastrophic illnesses, you can still apply to this fund. You'll still be considered. Applications that do provide services to families with children with catastrophic illnesses will get preference over an application that does not, but it's not always the case that we have an application that fits that preference for every fund. So even if you don't fit that preference, it's still okay to apply for that fund, because there may be application. I mean, we may receive no applications that fit that preference for this fund. So it's still worth applying, but just know that any application that does fit that preference is going to be a stronger application and more persuasive to the selection committee. Any questions on just the way that we have our funds on this sample fund listing? We'll get more into how to apply this in the application in a moment, but I just want to make sure that this is clear, because you're going to apply directly to one of these funds. We want to make sure that you understand how to read these fund purposes. Okay, hearing none. Application expectations. So now we're going to walk through actually filling out the application for our impact grants. So what should you do when you're applying for an impact grant? The first thing you want to do is read our FY25 Impact Available Funds list. Like I said, that will be available on our website later today. It lists all of the impact funds that we're going to be giving away from. It has all of their fund purposes. It has all of the money that is available in that fund to give away. You want to make sure you're identifying funds where your project meets the fund criteria. So in our last example, the fund criteria, which was in red, was programs serving youth. Your application will be especially competitive if you're also meeting any fund preferences. So for the last fund, that preference was serving families with children with catastrophic illnesses. When you submit your application, you'll need to choose the fund that you are applying to. And again, you can apply to more than one, but you're going to have to submit an application for each fund. So you want to make sure that you select the name of the fund that you've identified. In our case, it was the Sarah Hooper Fund, I believe. You want to specify the amount that you are requesting from that fund. As I said, we don't give out grants less than $500, and we can't give out grants greater than the amount of available funds in that impact fund. Last, you're going to choose whether this is program support or individual support. We'll get into that in a minute. Some additional just great tips to use when you are applying for really any of our applications here at the Community Foundation. First, make sure the project name, which is sort of the title of your application, make sure that that field is unique. That way we can differentiate some of your applications from other ones. Please do not name your application the name of your organization. That information is tracked and we can see that information. But if all the applications names are just the title of your organization, it becomes very difficult for us on our end. So please make sure that as you're applying, the project name, which is again like the title of your application, please make sure that that field is separate from or unique from any of the other applications that you're submitting. All of our grant communications will come via email, and many of those emails are sent through our grant software that we'll talk about a little bit later. Because those emails come from our grant software and not from us as individuals. They don't come from our community foundation domain, which is frederickcountygives.org. So make sure that you are adding administrator@grantinterface.com to your safe senders list or your white list or whatever your email application calls it. These automated emails do have a tendency to sometimes get caught up in spam filters, and we don't want that. We want you to be able to have timely access to notifications about whether your grant's been awarded, whether we are seeking an interim report or a final report. Those will come from our automated system. So just make sure that that email address is whitelisted so that it doesn't get clogged in your spam filter. The character limits in our free text fields are very large. I think it's 10,000 characters for most of our free text field. That is there to give you the freedom to say as much as you want to say. It's not there to create an obligation for you to fill that field. Just because there might be a 10,000 character limit on a field does not mean that we expect 10,000 characters. You are welcome to fill out those fields as verbosely or as concisely as you feel. And please remember, as you are filling out those free text fields, we likely don't know your work as well as you know your work. So, and certainly the committee members who are volunteering to review these applications are not going to be as familiar with your work as you are. So please try to avoid, if you can, insider terminology or jargon, abbreviations as well. If there are instances where it's just really cumbersome to not abbreviate, then just at least once in your application, spell out that abbreviation so that we can reference it, and then you can use the abbreviation after that. The last thing, and this is really good advice for anyone who has not done it yet, make sure you are updating your Candid GuideStar profile, or if you have not claimed your Candid GuideStar profile, make sure that you do that. Candid basically pulls your information from your 990 and pulls together all of your publicly available information to give like a snapshot of your organization. You want to make sure that if you have not yet claimed that profile that's based on public information, that you do, so that you can also help to keep it up to date. Many grantors use that as a resource. So you definitely want to make sure that that is up to date and reflective and accurately reflective of your organization. Our application does allow us to automatically pull in information from GuideStar. There's a little button for a portion, not the entire application, but a portion of the application. There's a button where you can click the import from GuideStar, and it will basically fill out all of the, the name of your organization, all the stuff that gets filled into your 990. So in order to make use of that very nifty feature in our application software, make sure that your Candid GuideStar profile is up to date. Any questions? Okay. So one of the questions on the application, and one of the things that we've talked about a little bit already, is project support or individual support. So you're going to have to select on your application whether it is in support of a project or support of an identified individual or household. So if it's a project, you'll click project support application. If it's for an individual or a household, you'll click individual support application. As you are applying, you want to make sure that you are explaining how your project fits. If you are a project, we're going to go through the process as someone applying for a project. If you are a project, you want to make sure that you're explaining how your project fits the fund purpose. You want to be specific about the impact that the project or program will have. And we always like to see things that are measurable. And then you'll describe the activities of the project, the work that you're going to do, and how that will help to achieve the impact or the outcome that you are working towards. So to give you an example of what that might look like, I'm going to refresh our memory on our example fund here, which is the Sharon Hooper Fund for Children. With $15,000 available, it supports both projects and individuals, supports program serving youth with preference given to services for families with children with catastrophic illnesses. So if you are a project and you are trying to apply to this fund during our impact grant season, You might say something like, our organization provides housing stability support services. Each year, 15% of our clients indicate that a catastrophic illness has destabilized their finances and threatens their ability to maintain housing. We are asking for funds to pay for food, rent, transportation, and/or medical expenses for households whose children are dealing with catastrophic illnesses to ensure these families remain in stable housing. So why is this an example of a better application? It's clear that the project supports children and families. This does, in this case, meet our preference of serving families with children with catastrophic illnesses. And it's also clear about the activities and the impact that it wants to make. So the activities are going to be paying for rent, food, transportation, medical expenses. And the impact here is they want to negate that 15% of clients who might otherwise fall into homelessness. So this is an example that sort of covers all the bases, and it doesn't take 10,000 characters to cover all those bases. You can do it sort of in a pretty short little paragraph. If you are applying for support for an individual, you'll want to explain how that individual or household meets the fund criteria. You want to explain how that individual or household was selected, and then documentation for where the expenses come from. That could be invoices, that could be bills, rent, medical bills, etc. So for the same fund, the Hooper Fund, if you are applying, for support for an individual, you might say something like, our organization provides housing stability support services. Sarah S. and her 4 children recently graduated from our transitional housing program into permanent housing of their own. One of Sarah's children has since been diagnosed with leukemia. Because of lost work for hours and mounting medical expenses for her child, Sarah may lose her current housing. We are asking for funds to pay for rent, food, transportation, and related medical expenses for Sarah S. and her family. So again, it's clear how the individual meets the fund criteria. It's a family with young children. It meets the preference because it's a family with a child that is experiencing a catastrophic illness. They're clear about what the activities are. They're going to pay for rent, food, transportation, and medical expenses. And the outcome here is they want to avoid Sarah and her 4 children falling into homelessness after just recently starting permanent housing on their own. So are there any questions so far on these sort of narrative examples? If you have a question about how your individual organization might position themselves, I am happy to answer those questions, but please let's find some time offline and I'd be happy to talk through it with you. I'd like to keep our questions more general, but like I said, I'm totally happy to assist you offline if you have questions about your individual project. But any questions about how either on the project support side or the individual support side, you might tailor your ask to fit that fund purpose. Okay. As a part of our application process, we also request and require certain financial information. So we're going to go over what financial information we request and require on our application. For a project or program, we're going to want to see the budget that is specific to that project or program. And your budget really is an opportunity, I think, for you to tell the story of the program, because you want to make it clear where your money is coming from and then how your money is going to be spent as part of this project. I'm a big believer that budgets really can be narrative tools. So make sure that if you do put notes in your budget, that they sort of clarify how money is being spent, or if there are any sort of outlying expenditures or income that you might want to provide more detail to, you can provide some notes on your budget as well. In addition to that program-specific budget, we also require financial information about your organization as a whole. So that will be either a statement of activities, a statement of financial activities, a financial review, or an independent audit. We'll get into which of those 3 is appropriate for your organization in a little bit. But the important thing to know is that we're going to require both specific information about the project and how you intend to use those funds, but also information about the overall financial health of your organization. So what might a project or program budget look like? We don't have a required format. So if you are currently using a format that works well for you, I'm sure it will work well for us too. or if it's a format that you've used to apply for a different organization, I'm sure that format will work well for us too. We just want to make sure that your program budget includes income, whether committed or pending, any expenditures by category and line item, and then if you have any vendor quotes that back up those expenditures. So like, let's say if you are applying to buy 4 more refrigerators for a food bank, then it would behoove you to put in, if you have a quote for what those refrigerators might cost, it's a good thing to put those in, and that gives us some understanding of where the dollar amount for your request comes from. You don't need to include non-cash expenses or unrelated operating expenses in your project or program budget. It's okay for your program budget to be specific to the operations of your budget, or sorry, specific to the operation of your program and not organizational. So here is an example. This is the XYZ nonprofit for ABC project. So you'll see where that first red arrow is on the left, that it's specific to the project. It's not the entire budget for the entire organization. It's just a budget for this project. It also shows on the right what are the start and end dates for that budget for the program. And then you'll see it lists all the income. And I think a notes section is helpful so that you can provide some additional color commentary. But you'll see that there's a bit of color commentary around the income. This is the income side. On the expenses side, same thing. You'll see that to the left, the red arrow to the left lists all of the expenses for the project, and on the right there are some notes that give some more detail. So if this says an equipment purchase, it says that we've also attached some vendor quotes, so we know where that purchase amount comes from. There is a line item for a consultant, and it shows how they got to that $1,000 figure. It's 20 hours at $50 an hour. So I'm not going to go through every single thing, but I think you get the point. We want to make sure that we have an understanding of where this money is coming from, where this money is going, and any supporting documentation that you could have for that. The last thing is your project income should be 0 or positive at the bottom line. If your bottom line is not, then just you should explain somewhere in your budget why that is. Whether you are intending to transfer funds from somewhere else, whether there are some expenses you think you may not actually incur, but whatever the case may be, some color commentary about why your project may have a deficit if indeed it does. Any questions on program or project budgets? Okay. Your organizational financial information. So depending on the size of your organization, not your project, but depending on the size of your organization, there are different levels of financial scrutiny that are required. So if your organization has less than $300,000 in annual charitable contributions, then there's a financial form that you can fill out. There's a link to it in our application. There's also, I believe, a link to it somewhere on our website. It's a very simple form that you can fill in your organization's standard, kind of profit and loss financial statement data. If you're an organization that has more than $300,000 but less than $750,000 in annual charitable contributions, you will need to submit what's called an independent financial review. And what that is you would take your normal operational financial statements, statements of activity, profit and loss. They need to be reviewed by a CPA, and the CPA, there's a technical term for it that your CPA may understand, and I'd be happy to share more information with them. But basically, your CPA needs to just verify that things here look correct and that it is in line with generally accepted accounting principles. If you are an organization with more than $750,000 in annual charitable contributions, you'll need a full financial audit. So that is where you hire an outside auditing firm. They come in, they review your books. It typically takes a couple of weeks. At the end, you get a large packet of information from the auditor that details all of their findings. They also typically have a letter at the top that just outlines whether there were findings, whether there were no findings, and some detail about that. So if you have over $750,000 or more, you'll need a financial audit. And I should say these are not requirements that are specific to the Community Foundation of Frederick County. I believe this is Maryland state law that requires this level of financial scrutiny. Any questions about the financial information or the project budget? Okay. So what happens after submission? Our application closes on September 15th, so a week from Thursday. We will send approval and denial notifications by around the end of October, maybe early November. By the end of November, we'll expect all of your grant agreements back. So if you have been selected for an award, you will receive not just notification that you've been selected, but also you will receive a grant agreement to sign. That happens inside of Foundant, which is our grant software application. So you will get an automated email that says there is a grant agreement waiting for you in Foundant. Please log in and complete it. You'll go to the grant portal, the same grant portal that you used to apply for the grant. And on your home screen, you should see something labeled as a follow-up, and it will say grant agreement. Later in the year, you will get your interim report the same way. You'll get it through our grant application software. You can fill it out right there. And the same thing with our final report. You'll get that through our grant application software. So the grant agreements will be due by the end of November. The grant year begins on January 1st of 2025. In that first month, maybe into the second month is when you should get your grant disbursement. We will disperse all of the money upfront. Unless there is something specific where you have requested a reimbursement basis, we front load all of our dollars. The interim report will be due the end of July, which is just about the 6-month mark. And then by the end of January of the following year will be your final report. So again, a year-long grant period with an interim report in the middle and a final report at the end. All of the funds upfront. So as I said, money up front, unless there is a particular situation where you need us to pay vendors directly, in which case then the money will be sent to the vendors based on the charges. You'll need to provide some program and fiscal reporting. Financial reporting will include profit and loss statement. We don't typically require proof of payment or proof of receipt when we do that reporting. So if you have an updated budget that you want to submit, that's fine. We don't necessarily need every piece of documentation that goes behind that. Some of these projects spend a lot of money in a lot of different places, and we don't need to see every receipt for everything that you have spent. We just need to make sure that money is being spent. Any unused funding at the end of the grant period needs to be returned to us. And again, that grant period is the calendar year of 2025. And in some cases, we may request proof of expenditures. We typically don't, but we do reserve that right in case there's something that we need to verify. Any questions about the post-submission timeline? Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our Impact Grant training program. There is going to be, as I said, immediately following this, in the same Teams link, same webinar, we're going to walk through how to actually use Foundant, our software. So if you are not familiar with Foundant and you'd like to stay, please do. If you feel very comfortable using Foundant, then you're welcome to go and enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon. I'm going to give everyone a little bit break while we, maybe a 5-minute break while we transition to Foundant training. But before we do that, any questions about something I have not covered today?
Yes, I have a question. Yeah, I do have a question about if you finish your project early, can a final report be submitted earlier than January of the following year?
Sure, absolutely. The software might not be loaded with that final report yet. So if you would like to send it early, just shoot me an email if you don't see it there, and I'll make sure that it's loaded into that application so you can submit the final report.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I also have a question. I think you mentioned it before, but when are the list of the available applications going to be on the website?
Those should be there later today.
Great.
And I can send out an email to this group as well to let you know that that's been posted.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions? Well, my name is Kevin McHugh. My contact information is here on this slide. I will be your point of contact for anything that comes up during the impact grant process, whether it's if you have problems with the grant software, that's me. If you have questions about the application or how you should fill something out, that's also me. So make sure you jot down my email address, and if you come into any difficulty at any point in the process, please reach out, because we want to make sure that these funds can be awarded so that they can be put to use in our community. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have a question or if you're stumbling over something. Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, we're going to switch to our foundant training at 12:15. I have 12:11 on my clock. So at 12:15, we'll walk through how to actually use the software to submit your application. So if you are comfortable with that, please feel free to drop off. Otherwise, hold tight for another couple minutes, and we'll start at 12:15. Okay. It is 12:15 on my clock. Are people ready to go? I think that most people have their cameras off, which that's totally fine. But if you want to either give me a shout in the chat or come off mute and just let me know that you're ready to go, then we'll get started. Or a wave. I'll take a wave if you want to turn your camera on.
Janet Whitcomb's ready.
Thank you, Janet. Yep. Okay. Seeing some people saying ready in the chat. Okay. Wonderful. So we're going to cover how to use our grant software in order to submit your application. The first thing that you want to do is you're going to go to our website. Our website is frederickcountygives.org. You should see it on your screen now. If you are looking to apply for our grants, you're going to click apply up here at the top of the screen. You can either click on apply or you can hover over apply and then come down and click on grants. If you click on grants, it goes straight to our grant page. If you click on apply, it will just, there's another click to get over to the grants. Scroll down a little bit and you'll see, goes over some kind of basics in applying. You want to scroll down until you see types of grants. So on August 15th, which is Thursday, our impact grant cycle will be open. And once you click on impact grant and scroll down a bit, you'll see a button here that says apply. Currently, we're in our strategic grant cycle. So you'll see a button here and it will look just like this, except it will say apply for impact grants and it will be under this impact grant tab. But that button won't be there until Thursday. And it also won't be there after September 15th. So it's only going to be there from August 15th through September 15th. You'll see a button here at the bottom. When you click that button that says apply, it will bring you to the login page for our grants interface. Now, if you can't remember whether you have created an account or in the past, or you know you've created an account but you can't remember your password, you can use the forgot your password link if you want to. You can also email me because I have the power to do that. So it's often the case that maybe an organization might have one account for their development professional, and then their development professional leaves and they get a new one, and they know that there is an account associated with their organization somewhere, but they don't remember what the account was or whose email address or what password. I can help with all those problems. So if you get to this point and you think, I don't remember if I have an account already or not, email me and I can help you out. If you know that you don't have an account already, you can click create new account. Obviously, if you know your account login information, you can enter and click log on. But assuming that you have not created an account with us in the past, you'll click create new account. There's a fairly long list of information to put in. Not all of it is required. You'll see anything that is required has an asterisk next to it, so you'll know what is required. Your organization name, your EIN, this is important because this is what helps tie all of your grants together. You may enter in an EIN there and then click create account and it will say, we already have accounts for that EIN. I think the system will still let you proceed. You're also welcome to, at that point, if you are unsure, you're welcome to contact me and I can help you out and decide whether you already have an existing profile for your organization or not. But it's that EIN that ties all the organization's or all the organization's requests together. We require a telephone, an address, and an email address in order to get in contact with you for all the things that we might need to for your grant, whether that's an award letter, whether that's following up for some information. There's some basic information about your organization here. And when you click next, it's not going to let me because this information isn't filled out. But this is the information about your organization. When you get down to user information, which when you click next, it will move to user information. Then you put in your information, which is your email address, your name. And that's what ties your user account to the organization account that's tied to the EIN. The information is very basic for the user information. It also asks for executive officer information. Sometimes the person who is applying is the executive officer, like the executive director. Sometimes it's not. We just want to make sure that we have both. And then last, it will walk you through the process of setting up a password, which is very standard. Again, if you have any trouble at any point in time during this process, you're totally welcome to contact me, although it's pretty straightforward. So once you've created your user account, you'll log into a home screen that looks like this. And there's not a lot on it, but that's because you're a new user and you don't have a lot of new stuff yet. So there are two tabs here. Active requests are any applications that you have going currently. Historical requests are any applications that you have made in the past. We don't have an active request now because we haven't applied yet for our impact grant, but you would see just like this, you'll have some text here that says, you don't have any requests, but hey, why don't you apply for some? And you can click apply here to begin the process. When you click apply, it will show you every active grant that we have going at the moment. So right now we're still in our strategic grant cycle. So right now our strategic grant is the only one that's active. On Thursday, this one will be inactive and you'll see FY25 Impact Grant here. So it will look pretty much the same, except it will just say impact instead of strategic. You can hit apply to just begin the application. You can also click preview and it will preview what the application looks like for you. Now this is our strategic application. So yours will look slightly different, but mostly the same. There's information, your project name is the name for your application. So that's the one that we want to make sure is unique. So you'll provide some unique name for your project. The amount that you are requesting is here. Again, make sure that the amount is greater than $500 and equal to or less than the amount in the fund. We ask that if there is fewer than $1,000 available in the fund, please just request the full amount. If there's more than $1,000, then request whatever is the most appropriate amount for your project. You don't need to request all of the money that's in a fund. Some of our funds have $1,500. Some of our funds have tens of thousands of dollars. So if you are asking for a $5,000 grant and there's $15,000 available in the fund, you can just ask for the $5,000 that your project requires. You won't have a strategic initiative here because it's our impact grant, but you would select here, where you would select which fund you are applying to. And as you go through, as I said, some of the character limits here for these questions are very large, 10,000 characters. You don't need to fill that entire space with text. That's totally fine. You are not, you don't get extra credit for filling out the whole field. There are no knocks against you if you don't fill out the whole field. So just do what is appropriate for you. And if you give me a second, I think I can transition to the actual application for the impact grant cycle. But to do that, I have to log out. So it's just going to take me a moment. Okay. Thank you for your patience there as I switch over to the Impact app. So same thing, you want to make sure that your project name is unique. The amount requested higher than 500,000, equal to or less than the total amount of the impact. This is the list from which you will choose the fund that you're applying to. And as you can see, there are quite a few. So if you remember our training from about an hour ago, one of the first things you want to do is make sure you are capturing that fund name so that you are so you're applying to the correct fund. After you have selected your fund, this is where you'll put in that fund purpose. This is some of the narrative that we walked through earlier. There was a specific narrative that we were applying to the Hooper Fund. There was a narrative for a project application, and there was a narrative for an individual support application. This is where you would put in that explanation of how you believe your application fits the purpose of that fund. We ask whether this is Frederick specific. Some of these questions are standardized across our applications in order to actually standardize our data with other grant makers here in Frederick County so that we have comparable data with one another. It's called a Frederick Data Project. So if your grant only serves people from Frederick County, then you want to click yes here. If your project or your individual supports people from Frederick County, but not only people from Frederick County, then you'll want to click no. I want to reiterate, clicking no there does not disqualify you from getting a grant, so that you're not telling on yourself there. We just need to know whether it's a solely Frederick County project or individual support, or whether it expands beyond Frederick County. You'll indicate whether this is a new or ongoing project. We also have a list of basically categories under which your project might fall. If you're not sure, you can click this link right here, and it will show you a description for those categories. If your work could fall into more than one category, just pick whichever category you think is most accurate or fits best. Again, this allows us to compare data with other grant makers in Frederick County, so that's why we ask these types of questions. This last one here is an important one. This is whether your application is for individual support or for project support. And remember, when you're looking at the list of available funds, if you are applying for individual support, you want to make sure you're applying to funds that have that IN marker next to their available fund amount. Similarly, if you're applying for a project, you want to make sure that whichever fund you're applying to, next to their fund amount, that there's a P in the parentheses. If there's a P and an IN, that's fine. You just want to make sure that you at least, if your project, it has a P, or if you're an individual support, it has an IN. We ask for information about your organization as a whole. One is whether your organization is fiscally sponsored. If you don't know, the answer is probably no, but if that's not clear to you, you're welcome to give me a call. We capture mission, fiscal year start. All of this information here is general information about your organization, and you may notice this yellow C next to these questions. Anything that has a yellow C next to it is information that we can pull in automatically from GuideStar. I don't have, this is a preview of the application. It's not a real application. So if I were logging in as a grant seeker, whichever EIN my user account is tied to, that EIN, basically GuideStar takes that EIN and pulls the information in. There's a button that allows you to just import all the information for these fields directly from GuideStar based on your EIN. You can modify those answers after they get pulled in. So if something gets pulled in and you want to add more detail or it doesn't look quite right, you can modify these fields. That's totally fine. You're not locked into what gets pulled in from GuideStar, but we do find it cuts down a good amount of time on the application. Also, a good reason why you should keep your GuideStar information up to date. So ideally, GuideStar will pull in all this information from your 990. Here, where it says audit, reviewed financial statement, or financial form is where you will upload your organization's financial records. So again, if that is an organization that has fewer than $300,000 in annual charitable contributions, that's a financial form. We have a link to it right here. It's a very simple form in my opinion. It's the name, the EIN, and you probably click 501c3 with fewer than $300,000 in annual contributions. And then there's just a little bit of information about your organization and a space for you to fill in some of like basic kind of budgeting things. So if you're a smaller organization, we have this template available for you. Feel free to use it. If you are a larger organization, you'll need either a reviewed financial statement or a full financial audit. And either of those things you can upload by clicking upload a file, and it will open up a window for you to select a file that you want. You'll click open and it will upload those files. There is a drop down for you to select the range that is most appropriate for your operating budget and what type of organization you are applying from. There are also some staff size ordinals. And then you can upload, we ask for a staff list or an org chart. You can upload that here using the same upload mechanism. You can also provide some additional detail in that open text field there. We ask for a roster of the board or the governing body for fiscally sponsored projects. That is sometimes an advisory board rather than a real board of directors. But whatever your governance structure is, that's where you would attach a roster for your governing body. And then review our non-discrimination policy. So there is only one option, which is to choose to comply with our non-discrimination policy, but please do read through it. The last bit here, these are attestations. So you'll attest that you are in compliance with the Maryland Solicitations Act. So that is registering for any charitable organization that solicits donations in Maryland. Your options are yes or no, or if you're a religious organization or governmental or quasi-governmental organization, you're exempt from that requirement. So you would select exempt if you are either a religious organization or a governmental or quasi-governmental organization. Same thing for the Department of Assessments and Taxation, yes, no, or you are exempt. We do double check this. So I know things can change, but we don't just take you on your word there. We do make sure that we do our due diligence on the back end to verify that that's true. Last is your name if you're applying, your title, and then whatever the chief professional officer for your organization is. So that's a CEO or an executive director. But basically, we want to make sure that the operational leader of the organization knows that you are applying for these funds. And when you're finished, there will be a button at the bottom that says submit. You can save this application as a draft and come back to it. You don't have to do it all in one sitting. You can answer a couple questions, and who knows, the phone rings, something pops up, another fire starts. You can save it as a draft and then come back to it later. If you were to save it as a draft, when you went back to your home screen, you would see it there under active requests. So you'd be able to just pick it up kind of right from where you left off, and then you can submit it when you're finished. Once it is finished, it will go through several rounds of review on our end. It will eventually go to a committee, our grants committees, who are, again, our volunteer members from the community with a variety of experiences and expertises. They review it, and then when you receive a final disposition on your application, you'll receive an email notification whether it's denied or approved. If you are approved, back in my dashboard's a little bit different, but you'll see a tab that says follow-ups, and there will be a grant agreement there if you have been approved. The grant agreements are pretty simple. If you give me a minute, I'm sure I can show you one. Sorry, my computer's being a little slow. I may have to, sorry, I may have to pass on showing you the grant agreement. The grant agreement is very simple. it's, yes, I want to receive this grant. There's an electronic signature. There might be 1 or 2 questions, but it's a very, very simple form. After you have submitted that grant agreement, again, at the bottom of that page, there will be a button that says submit. When you click submit, I'll get an email that says you've submitted it. I'll take a look at it, make sure that everything looks good. Again, it's a short form, so everything usually is good. And once we have that grant agreement, then that's sort of all we need from you in the short term. All of those signed agreements will go to the board for ratification, and then after that board meeting, which I believe the board meeting where they should be approved is the end of October. So after that board meeting, then the payments, then you'll start to get payments, and they should be completed by January, maybe early February of 2025. Any questions on the software that I may not have covered? Okay. Well, just remember, if you do have any problems, sometimes you don't have questions until you get into it. That's certainly the kind of person that I am. Once you get in there and you start to root around, if you do have any problems, please just email or call me. I'm happy to help. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoy your Monday. I'm looking forward to a great impact grant season. We've got at least $650,000 to give away during this cycle. So it really a chance to make a big impact in our communities. Beth, I'm glad it was helpful. Take care, everyone. And again, reach out if you have any questions.